Hello, everybody. So nice to see such a crowded room. Daniel Ziblatt, the director of the Center for European Studies, and welcome you all this afternoon. This is the Guido Goldman Lecture, the 7th annual Guido Goldman Lecture. And for those of you who didn't know who Guido Goldman was, he, along with Stanley Hoffman, was the founder of this center back in 1969. 2000, yeah, very long time ago. Time circle here. He was very important, of course, for our center, but also very important for transatlantic relations more generally. He was the founder of the German Marshall Fund, and so played a major role in transatlantic relations over many, many decades. And you know, it's fitting that we recognize him today and his commitment to transatlantic relations, especially in this current moment when I was trying to think of adjectives to describe the transatlantic situation: confusing, unsettled, bizarre, etc., and dangerous, possibly dangerous as well. So in this moment, I can't think of a better person, in fact, to speak in recognition of Guido Goldman than Robert Habeck, our speaker today. So as many of you who are here will know, Robert Habeck needs little introduction. Most recently, he served as Germany's Vice Chancellor and Federal Minister for Economic Affairs and Climate Action in the so-called Traffic Light Coalition government from 2021 to 2025. And in that role, he stood in a very important position as many of the most consequential decisions that were being made in this period were being made, balancing economic stability with ambitious climate goals, responding to profound geopolitical and security threats that took place in that period. He's really been, in my view, a voice of both idealism and pragmatism. And so I'm really excited to hear from him today as we think about this moment in which we're in. Maybe I'll just say a very brief word about his path into politics, which I think is also distinctive. He is trained in philosophy, philology, holder of a doctorate in philosophy. He is an author of novels and other works. He entered politics in Schleswig-Holstein, where he rose through the ranks of the Green Party and regional politics in the state parliament, and served as deputy minister president, minister for energy, environment, and agriculture in Schleswig-Holstein. And now in 2025 has stepped down from just last year from the Bundestag, and is currently, in some sense, re-engaged in academic work in a way dealing with the security crisis that we've been facing. And I think he's come to us just from Denmark, where he's been spending the fall. So we're very excited to welcome you, Robert Habeck, to the Center for European Studies, really in a moment where these kind of crises are facing all of us. Really looking forward to your comments. The talk is entitled Democracy and Security in Unsettled Times. You'll speak for about 20 minutes. Then we'll have a conversation up here for a bit, and then we'll open it up for conversation. And then afterwards, we're having a reception upstairs, so I encourage everybody to come to the reception afterwards. So thank you, Robert Habeck.
So hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. It's an honor, it's a pleasure, and maybe I start with some remarks about my speaking position, that you don't expect something I can't deliver, but maybe also hear the undertones of things I don't either have the time or I don't dare to say. So first of all, it's called lecture, but I'm not here to lecture you or give a lecture, which is kind of a funny position for me. I'm not a politician anymore, at least for the time being, but that I'm doing now kind of academic research at an institute in Copenhagen, kind of a think tank, but publicly funded, belongs to the Defense or Foreign Ministry and to the government of Denmark. So actually, I don't know if I'm an employee of the government of Denmark, but kind of in a way. But I can't, of course, get the politician out of my head. So what I try to do tonight, and what I'm actually doing, is thinking with the experience of politics about what's going on. So it's a kind of in-between. I try to understand also what happened in the years when I served in office or was a politician, and give advice to people, try to reflect it, which sounds like academia, but it's not that academia that I do field studies. I think I have done the field studies with my body. So you have to see that this is a political speech, but not about trying to convince you in a way that you should believe in my ideas, but try to understand what's going on in well, maybe in the world, but definitely in liberal democracies. Secondly, I'm speaking as a European now in Harvard in America, and this is kind of funny and still hard for me to understand because in my time in office, I started office in December 2021. In February 22, Russia invaded Ukraine, and I woke up with Putin in a way, and the government broke apart the day Donald Trump was elected the second time, and I ended with Trump in a way. So, and in this period when I served in office, actually the Americans, the Biden administration, and the ones that had access to the Secret Service of the United States of America were the closest ally. So they really taught me to be careful, watch out, push Germany and Europe in another direction than before. And I don't have this feeling of partnership anymore right now to the government. So this is, but I try to speak as a transatlantic politician, but I'm well aware that I sometimes am mixed up in this new and hard to understand world because I still, in a way, believe that our two nations or continents have shared value system and a common ground. But there is also some gray zone in between. Maybe right now, not here in this audience tonight, but maybe in general. And thirdly, or maybe you don't know, but now you knew. I'm a member of the Green Party, so I consider myself as a progressive, maybe center-left politician, though I always try to push my party into the center because the Greens 40 years ago were founded as the anti-party party in Germany, so they very much opposed the whole system, not being part of it, and I never really could understand how a system could work if you are not part of it. So wanting to have responsibility but not belonging to the system I never understood it, but so I'm not a political neutrum, and that means that I'm not the biggest fan of Donald Trump, to say the least, and his government. So if you expect me to, when I say as I said, I don't want to lecture anybody, but when I say authoritarian governments and right-wing parties, I don't only mean the German AfD, but like in a broader sense, I'm speaking also about your country in a way. These were the three remarks I wanted to start with. So maybe 2, 3 observations that are important for what I try to work out. And actually, I mean, now this is a lecture, but you will feel and understand that I tell you about my reflection and thinking. So this is kind of work in progress. So to prepare this little speech was actually for me maybe more important than it is for you, because this is always forcing on oneself to write down or think through your argumentation. So first of all, I'd like to say, and this is of course enough for another lesson or maybe a book of Daniel or whatever, there are many reasons named why this wave of right-wing authoritarianism is sweeping through the world. Migration, too fast with climate issues, all these woke stuff of different sexual and ethnic identities, and I don't buy none of them. They might always be part of the discussion, and there might of course be points to debate in a country. This is undeniable the case, and there are problems and reasonable problems. How much migration do we need? How well do we integrate migrants? Does the old system of border control function or not? This is of course a point of debate. The same is true for climate action. You can do too much, you can do too little. You have to have social measures to make the changes bearable for the society. Of course, these are complicated points. But look at Hungary, where Orban is governing, or look also to Scandinavia, that has a very tight migration policy. There are also strong right-wing parties. So even countries that don't have migration problems, so to say, as Germany undoubtedly has, or challenges maybe so, they still have right-wing movements and also a right-wing president. People, now when my time in office, we had fierce debates about climate issues. In the end, the most completely overseen from myself, the most traumatizing and harsh debate was about heat pumps. Yeah, you are laughing. I think you have heard about it. But other countries are using heat pumps and have not a problem. So you can't say right-wing populism is rising because of heat pumps, because then you wouldn't have right-wing populism in Italy or somewhere else. And so it's going back and forth and back and forth. So my understanding is that this is a strategy. Right-wing parties, populistic parties are trying to pick up one relevant point of debate and blow it up like this is not, it's not becoming possible to find a common solution anymore. But this is not the reason or the core reason why we have this wave of authoritarianism sweeping through the world. My proposal is that it's economics, basically, on the ground of it. So when you go back in history, and maybe we can debate it, but this is you have really to dive into the data. But I would say that the success of globalization causes a lot of problems in some areas, mainly the rural areas where people, what every country has in common is that the right-wing parties are stronger in the rural areas and that the cities are more liberal, progressive, liberal democratic. In a way, why is this the case? The universities are there, the institutions are there. That means that people are more serving in the public sector. They have safe jobs in a way, so to say. More women are living in cities. The population is younger. They are more international, also more diverse, of course. So in a way, cities are not always the winner of the globalized world, but they can adapt to it better. And the steel companies, the rural areas, the farmers, the pressure on agriculture, it's more in the rural areas. So, and this is my reading, that the general benefit of globalization, which is undoubtedly there, created a lot of problems in some areas. And this causes, maybe in the beginning, the fear of losing a job or maybe being not respected for the job you're doing, and then this is easily exploited by right-wing populistic party. It's up to debate, I know, and there might be some of you who will still say, no, it's about migration. I would say, yeah, migration is kind of the effect of it, that when jobs are tight, then you say, this is now maybe too much, but it's not the reason, it's not the basis of all of it. The second thing I'd like to start with, and now this leads then directly in the very political idea I try to present to you, is that my experience now, after 20 years in a more or less leading role in German politics and partly so in European politics, is that the system that we created, the democratic system, becomes more and more self-reflective, meaning when you are a party member, you don't look so much to the reality, you look to other party members. The first glance is not what's happening outside, but it's in the party program. And if you want to be elected for an office or run for a parliament on whatever level, you tend, of course, to say what the party members want to say. So imagine, I don't know, a green or liberal or social democratic politician, and you are the party assembly, and he's saying, well, okay, we are now all social democrats here, and we know in our history we've done the right thing. But interestingly, I read the program of the Conservative Party. Sorry, I have to say, in some points they are right. And when I am member of the parliament, my idea is to find a compromise with the Conservatives. And if you believe in this, please vote for me. And then the next one is coming and say, okay, Assembly of Social Democratic People, we are the only one who know the truth, especially the Conservatives. They are always historically and ever on the wrong side. And if you vote for me, I will fight them until the bitter end. Who you voted for? But you know, of course, that after an election, you have to form a compromise, more or less. The same is true for media, and it's obviously true for social media, where the bubble becomes stronger and stronger. So in a way, what I'm trying to say is, and what I experienced in many different forms, is that the institutions of the system reflect the way how the institutions are running, and the common ground is lost in a way. These two problems, wrong understanding of what causes the right-wing wave of authoritarianism, and that though we work so hard, we means now the liberal politicians, and do our best, we can't escape this trap of always being caught in a system where you are measured inside the system. This is the point of my reflection. Now, I met Daniel in 2018 when he visited Germany, and that time, of course, because I met him, and I think this was the time where How Democracies Die came out, I really adopted the idea that democracies nowadays die from within. But, and this is a beacon of hope, hopefully, this is also true for authoritarian systems. They also can die from within. It's not a guarantee, but they have also their own contradictions, because the same applies to them as well. This is not the difference to democracies that they represent. So what are the contradictions, or the inner contradictions? First of all, authoritarian governments tend to promise everyone everything, and they maybe can't deliver. I think you know what I'm talking about. And they promise different groups different things, and sometimes they stand in direct contradiction. Secondly, sorry, I have to look to my watch on my paper. Then they create a lot of enemies. The democratic system, in a way, is built up for integrating people. The idea, when I can remember it, or I can measure it in myself, when I said in political speeches "we," and I do it all the time, also tonight, I think, somehow I always meant all of us, not only the progressive liberal people of the world, but including the enemy of democracies, like we, mankind, we the people. And I think this is in the mind of everyone talking about we and us, because the idea of democracies, in a way, if we talk long enough and if we exchange our arguments, everyone could agree on a common ground, or can find common ground. This is not how the authoritarian government works. They try to exclude a lot of people. So the longer they govern, the more enemies they make. Second contradiction, in a way. Then they create a lot of economic problems because they interfere within the market. Often inflation is high, not only maybe coming in the US, but look at Turkey, for example. They are really suffering from high inflation. The capital market is, or the fiscal market is maybe afraid of political interferences. So they also historically, they create sometimes economic problems and promise the better for the people. Then, of course, as they are using violence, they are afraid of violence. So I guess, every democratic politician in a way knows that he or she can be voted out of office. And then normally you say, okay, it was an interesting time. I maybe would have done the job a little bit longer, but you decided so, okay, good luck with the next ones. I do something else, maybe go to Harvard and say something to the people there. Not so much the authoritarian leaders. The least they have to fear is to go into prison, maybe sometimes worse things. And then you look at the really bad guys, they flee the country after another government is there, or they are voted out, or maybe people revolted against them. So what I try to say is that this dying of democracy from within is also applying for the authoritarian governments. And maybe the problem, this is what I meant, for me this is all a problem, and this is the most polite formulation I can find, will disappear after a while, and they destroy their own party, their own idea, their own movement from within themselves. But is this a reason for hope? Maybe not so much, because how long should that last? I mean, in the end, everything comes to an end, but the 30 Years' War lasted 30 years, and that's maybe too long. So we should not wait and hope for the best. But I think there are some lessons to be learned actually right now, not in the way that I have a concrete answer of how a political system now should be reformed. But maybe this is the thing that where I stand in my thinking, that this is the wrong way of thinking. And a lot of thinking I have done also is about the political system. When the authoritarian governments, movements are promising the people something and they're afraid of the people, then maybe it's about the people. It's about finding a strategy, a new answer. Defending democracy is not coming from within the parties, but maybe from people. Now, of course, it's true that the people voted for the parties once. So the German AfD is not voted, or it's coming, and they are electing these parties, or voting these parties and electing the politicians. And the same, of course, is true for America. And the authoritarian leaders have one funny thing, or it's not funny at all, but one thing is striking, and this is maybe not always true for the democratic politicians. They say what they mean and what they want to do. They say it, but we tend to overhear it all the time. So in a way, if you would contradict me and say, how can you believe in the idea of people solving the problem? They voted knowingly what's going to happen for Donald Trump and for, I don't know, for the other conservative parties or right-wing conservative parties we are talking about. You're right. But does it mean that this idea is completely wrong? I don't think so. Because in a way, we need to believe our hands are bound. The progressive democratic politicians and people have to believe that democracy in the end works because there are more people who believe in common understanding and rationality and common ground than people who don't. And if we give up this belief, then we have lost the battle. So in a way, there is a saying that democracy thrives from assumptions it cannot itself guarantee. Well, the idea, and I studied philosophy once, I call it now for better, in not having better words, the regulative idea is that this guarantee is guaranteed by the people. That are more people believing in the meaning of liberal democracy than others. And the outcome of this is now, and I think this would change a little bit the political academic debate, that we means us now, should not try to reflect so much about the structure of liberal democracies. And we should stop criticizing ourselves for being so stupid, ignorant, and overseeing the problems, which always happened, of course, and I don't deny it. But we should think about, and this is what I try to say and outline in a minute, think about potential answers, how we can overcome the situation. And if I see it right, the media and also the academia is not doing it. But the storytelling is always, well, the left has overdone, it was not self-critical enough, and so on. This is not true. I mean, when I think about my time in office and also my time as a party leader, the Green Party as a center-left party, we were always trying to self-critic ourselves. We thought all the time, are we demanding too much of the people? Why do we have such a problem in the East German states? Why? So we are questioning ourselves all the time. I don't see that the right-wing populistic parties are doing only the slightest bit of them. They are completely convinced that they fight. I don't know if they think they fight the good fight, but they want to win the fight no matter what. So maybe we shift our attention now from self-critic to constructive answers. And the answers should maybe take that part of believing in the people and liberal democracy that is not spoiled by the right-wing rhetoric, though we can learn from also what the right-wing parties have done. There are some things that I can conclude. First of all, don't take every bite that the right-wing parties throw in the arena, because this wave of outrage always makes them they benefit more from this wage of outrage because of the structure of the system. If it's true that the people who believe in real democracy believe in a way in compromise and reason and common understanding, shouting and creating fear in the end always helps the other side. So first observation, maybe don't jump at every bite. Secondly, create an awareness of a shared problem or maybe a shared concern. So the idea that it's about excluding the migrants, excluding minorities, is completely wrong. In the end, if the system, like I'm sure, let's talk about the German AfD, they want to implement in Germany, in the end, everyone who is not completely on their line is a potential victim. So creating a common understanding of what is at stake. Secondly, building networks. And yes, of course, you think, okay, what else? Well, you know, the Monty Python video of the Judean, what they call People's Army, People's Front, and the People's Army of Judea, and they can't argue, they can't agree on anything. This is not so easy. And forming networks means that people from the business and the churches and the unions and the climate movement and whatever movement in a way should work together. Even though, fourth argument, even if they don't agree on everything, we don't have to agree on everything. If we have defended liberal democracy, we can start our debates from the beginning. But if there's no room for a debate at all, it makes no sense that they don't agree. And as a former politician, I can say it's the Monty Python world is actually the world I'm living in. So it's really, really hard to find a common strategy with people. You have to fight or you have debates on other fronts. But this is leading nowhere. Fifth, out of that, you can say if you can achieve that, if there's a common understanding, the kind of network thinking in the society, you can reach out to a lot of people out of the network. So let's say in people that regularly go to church, then the priest can maybe motivate them also to say something politically or be engaged. But this is not true maybe for people not going to church, but want to earn money, or climate activists or feminists or whatever. So everyone has a role to play. Then the fifth observation, and this is now it becomes also interesting for me as a person. All the data we have collected when I lately ran in the election campaign in Germany is saying that all the speeches we're giving, all the advertisements we're doing, and also the classical media are not changing people's mind, are not. So they are, this is what I mean with self-reference, they are preaching to the convicted in a way. So yes, the New York Times or maybe the German Spiegel or the German Zeit or whatever, maybe the broadcasting companies, they are important to share the information. But you can see in the data, at least in Germany, nobody is changing his or her political opinion because of the information given there. They only pick up the things they want to hear and they stay with their opinion. All these very important for politicians are these talk shows. I don't know if you have the same in the US. So this is like the prime time you can get on German television, and you sit there and you debate and you prepare, and after a debate, everyone is looking to the spin doctor saying, have I been good enough? And then you go in your head through all the thing. It's completely irrelevant. Nothing is going to happen. It's only relevant in the sense that if you say something wrong, the political opponent can make a scandal out of it. But you never convince anyone who is not convinced before they should vote for you or maybe change the political mind. The only thing that is working is neighborhood communication, so to say. People that are not politicians have the credibility to talk to other people. So, and this is very much against what I've been taught and what I also did in politics, because I did the big speeches from huge scenes to huge crowd of people. But I guess most of them were Green voters, and the other ones came there just to feel some hatred against me. I don't know why they went there. So, but direct communication, small communication, and therefore it's so hard for me to admit it, is the only thing, or maybe not the only thing, but there's the credibility. There people feel attached to and maybe think twice and maybe even change their opinion. So then, eighth, I mentioned it before, don't only concentrate on the liberal cities or maybe the university towns. Reach out to the rural areas, because the story of the other side, so to say, is we have a divided country. This is what they believe. And in this, because we are divided, we now pick a side and we make the division stronger. So when this is really the difference to liberal politics, when I started a political campaign, you always in the beginning tried to map the electorate, try to find out which group, and you give them funny names like, I don't know, interested climate activists or whatever. And they are, then you draw a horizontal map in a way where you try to position yourself, find what you're standing for, who's voting for you, and then you reach out to the neighboring groups. But the idea is reach out and convince them to vote for you. And this includes, of course, that you're not trying to reach out because time is not enough and money is not enough, and maybe they are so far away, to the ones who really are on the other side. But the political idea of this democratic electoral campaigning system is a horizontal system that we are in a way all reachable by some other parties. What they are doing, the right-wing authoritarian movement, is they don't go on the horizon, they go vertical, down, down, down. They become more extreme and more extreme. They even don't try to reach the other people, and they don't believe in reaching other people. And therefore, a division of a country, like the woke towns in the center and the poor people in the rural areas, is only playing in their cards. So it must be possible to reach out to the people in the areas that are not so much or not so easy to get involved. And lastly, as I mentioned before, my belief it's the basis or the starting point of this wave of authoritarianism is economics. Concentrate on bread and butter themes. And this is also against what I have done and what I like to do. Ideas, values, talk about values and ideas. But experience has taught me, in the end, excluding the ones, and maybe you belong to them, who really have a professional or maybe a moral interest in these kind of debates, in the end, it's interests and not values that make people be engaged. And it hurts me to say, because I believe in big ideas and I'd like to promote big ideas. But this is not what the data says, and this is not my experience. Last idea and last round, and then to wrap it up. And I don't know how far I should go at this point of time. You know, I left office, vice chancellor and minister, in May last year, and I left the German parliament in September. And after that, so this is like half a year now, I've done a lot of wonderful things, but. So it's a process in a way. It's not so long ago that I was in the system in a way, but in a way I have to admit that I can't see that we can fix the problems of liberal democracy by doing the same we have done that created the problems, but with the next generation of politicians, with more money, with more empathy, with whatever. And also, this is difficult for me to admit, because when Obama was elected in 2008, I was in Washington, and this was like a defining time for my political career, because the whole city, and I guess the whole United States, and actually the whole world, was like vibrating. Now it's going to happen, and now there is this hope and change is really coming true. I don't think right now that the next Obama, whoever that might be, can fix all the problems. So what I'm trying to think, and I can't translate it into power options, I have to admit it, is that we have to go back to go forward in a way. And go back means questioning the inner structure of the way that the systems, the institutions, parties, party groups in the parliament, media, social media, and so on and so forth are functioning. But then, if I may say so now, I've said it again, we, us, like the ones who believe in liberal democracies or think it's worth fighting for liberal democracies, if we succeeded, then we have all the reason to believe that we really succeeded, because what makes people stick to the authoritarian leaders that we are seeing now everywhere is the belief that they are successful. In a way, they are corrupted by the success of them. But politicians, as long as we have free votes and free elections, politicians, in a way, adapt to the market. They are always tempted to say, or at least to say what people want to hear, or they at least are attracted by the majority where people are moving to. If there's a strong liberal movement and success is presented to them, then there's all the reason to believe that also the parties, the conservative parties Daniel described so well in his book like 6 years ago, who became authoritarian movements, find their way back on the common ground of liberal democracy. In the end, what I'm trying to say is believe in our own success. And one trick I always used as good as I could in politician is convince ourselves that we are successful. And you don't have to be successful to be successful. You only have to say that you are successful, and then you win the argument. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Given us a lot to think about. So, and I've the full page of notes here. And I already had some questions before.
Note for you, I hope.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us a lot to think about. I mean, you spoke a lot more about democracy than security in our title. So I think my questions are about democracy, I think, because I think you've raised a lot to think about already here. So, when you were talking about the sense that most people like liberal democracy, I mean, I was reminded of a line from E.B. White, an American writer, who said that democracy is the recurrent suspicion that more than half the people are right more than half the time. And that's sort of the spirit of it. I like that quote.
And even, regulative idea is a quote from Immanuel Kant. Are you familiar with that? The German philosopher, you heard about it? Yeah, about him. In his first book, Kritik der reinen Vernunft, critic of the pure reason or whatever, he completely destroyed the belief in God. There's no reason to believe in God because you can't prove it. In his second book, Critic of the Practical Reason, if this is the right translation, he said, there might be no proof that there's God and I can't prove it, but there's a good practical reason to believe in God and eternal life and judgment after our death, because we become better people if we believe that someone will judge us. So even if we can't prove it, we might still use the idea as a regulative for the future. So, and I think in this way we should think about democracy. I don't know if people, from the Roman Empire and blood and games to the fascistic government of Germany, maybe we are wrong and people are in a way easily distracted and they vote for who forever is promising anything, and maybe for the ones who spread hatred. But if we're not believing that this is not true, then we have lost the battle. That is the idea. So we need to convince ourselves and others that this is true.
Yeah, so it's a kind of secular democratic faith.
In a way.
Yeah. So let's begin with that as the assumption then, for purpose of the conversation. And it seemed as if you were saying then that talking to people is not going to be enough, and that organization and what you'd call networks are really crucial. And so I wonder, in the German context, I mean, does this mean that, I mean, what does this look like? I mean, can the Green Party win 20% of the vote in Sachsen-Anhalt? I mean, how would this happen?
Not now. There's a
yes,
vote in.
But how would it? I mean, how
do
would
people
this,
know where Sachsen-Anhalt lies?
Yeah,
You may not have heard about it, but it is a state in Germany, in the middle of Germany, in a way. And there are elections forthcoming this September, and well, I think it's decided that the German AfD, the right-wing German party, becomes the strongest party. I don't see any way you could avoid it, but it might also be the case that they become so strong that they form a government without a coalition partner. So finally, they are so strong that they have a majority in the parliament. So that might be that we have in September the situation that the first time in Germany the AfD is running a government, which means, of course, they have the access that every authoritarian party is using to the education system, to the cultural system, to the secret service. We have a secret service system on the state level in Germany that they are sharing their information, of course. A lot of information is about the AfD. So the police, after the Nazi regime, the German police was, because the Nazis made, you remember it, bad things with the police, and it was on a central level, it was given to the state level. So then we have ICE in Sachsen-Anhalt, I think, all the time, and they are in East Germany, the German AfD. The AfD is not a normal right-wing party. Also, to European standards, in the European Parliament, the other right-wing parties don't want to cooperate with the AfD, and the East German AfD is even more hardcore in a way. So this is kind of a democratic nightmare, but it might happen in September.
So what? Okay, so
and the Greens
so
don't.
When I say the Greens can get 20%,
no,
I understand
if
that's
they
not
are
right.
if they are doing well and they are lucky, they achieve 5% and come over the 5% threshold. But in general.
Yeah.
When the Greens were very successful, when I was party leader, and later on also, we had phases where we were for a short period the strongest party in Germany. And what we did is exactly that. We tried to reach out into groups that were not on the Green Party side all the time. And we asked the people, and we presented people who came out of these groups and showed them, like, I mean, the Greens were founded out of a pacifistic movement, and because it was a student movement in the beginning, they had their fights with the police. And whenever we found a green policeman, we presented the green policeman like, see, there are policemen who are in the Green Party. Whenever we found an officer or a soldier of the German army in the Green Party, we said, and then we try to create a network like this. So it's not only the churches, which they are more on the green side, and the labor unions also, but going into these areas where we were weak.
And so is that still possible, I guess, is what I'm saying? And is it possible to
do this
kind of organization building at the local level?
Yes, it's possible, but I think what has changed from 2018 or so to nowadays, that it's harder coming from a party. So people, I think you have to say that people hate parties. I think everywhere. Maybe sometimes they accept, maybe love politicians or hate politicians, whatever. But nobody likes parties. So they accept parties maybe. But I think that this is my feeling of, I talked about it, that the inner system of the inner organization of liberal democracy has come to an end. You know, there's one, in a way, I see that the right-wing movement stole the language of the progressive parties. And the progressive parties are now using the conservative language. So my party is defending liberal democracy, protecting the constitution. In a way, we're always talking about the status quo. So, and we are the progressive parties. So, and think we stand for the change. And the other ones very aggressively say, well, vote for us, and everything becomes different. And as people are never satisfied with the status quo, I don't know why, but this is in our nature, you always have an advantage fighting the status quo. And this is lost. And therefore, I think, like a party politician trying to convince people to build networks, they should do it. but I'm talking about kind of social movement, and I said I can't translate it into real power options. So, but I think it must come from outside, not from inside the political system.
So in your talk, you said changing the structures. I mean, I guess this is what you have in mind, that there has to be some, so you're imagining some, say, social movements. I mean, maybe you could elaborate a bit more. I mean, what are the changing structures that are necessary within a democracy to allow this kind of work to be done?
I can give you examples, but
Yeah.
not like that this is a complete theory.
Yeah.
I mean, now I warned you, I'm speaking now as a European, but we are all using, including myself, American designed social media systems, Instagram, X, or they come from China. So basically we are using Elon Musk and or Chinese technology for our communication, which is also maybe should not be the last round. So, and what they're doing, the algorithms, but you are familiar with them, they are creating bubbles. So when you, I don't know, neutral example, when you see one cat video or dog video, you get like hundreds of them. And the same is true for soccer or cooking or traveling or whatever. And the same is true, of course, for your political preference. So when you do it tonight, look at one German AfD video, tomorrow you've got like hundreds of them all the time. So, but this is not rocket science to create a different algorithm that is basically saying when you have seen 3 cat videos, you have to watch 1 dog video. So when you see 3 videos of the Greens or Robert Habeck, you have to see 1 of Friedrich Merz. At least it's coming, and then you can scroll up, but you just have to be aware that the world is bigger than only this. But this is not in line with the way of the American way. Now, sorry, yeah, don't understand me wrong. I'm here for a reason of the way of capitalization of the communication system. They do whatever fits their benefit. And therefore, you need a rule in a way. This is the very European rules. What he's talking about rules that also dog videos are important, and this is not coming out of the system. You have to say 2 + 1, and then another 1, and then maybe you can start with 2 again. So yeah.
But so these are regulatory changes. I mean, when you were saying structural changes, that's maybe
no,
what you
that
mean, but
would
also
change the structure of.
I see.
So I can remember when I drove in when I was in an election campaign, I drove through East Germany. Suddenly, I got only AfD videos, but my algorithm is programmed on green videos in a way. They know who I am and what I am doing. And this was only because in this region where I was, everyone was watching AfD videos. So you can't escape the system of communication. Try it when you're in Germany and stay a while there in Cottbus, I think it was, a small German town. You can make the proof of the pudding. Structural changes in the political system, like your research area, are far more harder to define, but maybe
do you think they're important? I mean, do you think they're important, though?
Yes, and I can share, as we are among us, and I think it's only broadcasted next week or so.
Yeah.
One thing I thought many times about when I told you I entered office in December 21, and in the beginning of the period I was very popular. So also my party was. So like after 1 year or maybe 3/4 of a year, the polls were up and I was the most popular politician in Germany. And that time I thought about making a public announcement that this is now my last job in politics. Because of course I knew that everything that is up is going down in politics. And I really thought about that I should announce I'm making this 4 years as best as I can for the benefit of the country and the things I was elected for, climate issues, for example. But you can't blackmail me with some polls that people are not satisfied with this decision or that decision. And in a very small room, I dropped the idea and people were completely like, are you crazy or what? We need you for the next election campaign. And they only saw that I was popular and couldn't imagine that I wouldn't be part of the next election campaign. And maybe I was not strong enough or I lost the idea somehow on the way. Then the Heizungsgesetz, the heating law happened in Germany, and I became very unpopular in a way. And this was, of course, too late to say I mean, I was still in office. This was after 1.5 years, maybe. So to say I'm not running for the next election would then mean I give up, and then you're a lame duck. So you can't announce this in a phase of political weakness. And I'm questioning myself, what would have happened if I had said it? And when this debate about maybe I should explain this Heizungsgesetz thing, because the ones who are not familiar with German politics might think, is he crazy or what was he talking about? But so what about the idea that if you are entering office in Germany or maybe somewhere else, you can't run in direct progression for the next period? Think about it. So, I mean, one thing that is really destroying the system in a way is the more or less daily making polls every day, not only for the party, but then you can say it's not me, there are some other idiots, but also for the persons. So you will always find, like, every second day, like, kind of letter, he's going two steps up or two percentage down. And of course you can say we don't care, politicians don't care, they don't give a damn if they are liked or not. And maybe there are some, and I would think about myself that I was one of them, who say, well, it's not important, it's just, this is just happening. But this is a lie. Of course, you don't want to be hated by everyone. So this has an effect. And how can you find solutions in the political system and even try something new when you know first every differentiation from the normal way is a political scandal. So when journalists find out that you try to do something else than the party line is expecting, and they find it out before even you have said it publicly, they write the article about it. So there's always just creating a scandal or at least a debate, and then you're losing popularity. And you see this like immediately in the week. So I think you're familiar with that. You will also have it in the US that some politicians are going up or down, and the papers or whatever, the debate is saying, this is because of Venezuela, or this is because of the ICE. Rightly so. I mean, they should all go down, that are supporting this craziness in Minnesota and ICE. But you know what I mean, also for minor reasons, right, and that are not like civil war in the United States. So nobody is really has the courage to try something. So maybe this is a structural idea that I can present, that people don't find the inner strength for themselves, as I tried to explain to you myself, but we just say it, when you're in office, you work for the office and not use the office for the next election campaign. Full stop.
Term limits.
Things like this. Yeah. No, well, maybe then you can have a 4 years break, and then if you're young and fresh and you have some ideas, you can try again. But using the office like the common sense, for the better of the nation, should not be party politicalized in a way. So that is one idea, to gain trust in the system again. So but I don't know where this is leading to, and I wouldn't dare to say that if I would still an acting politician. But now I can say whatever I want. Okay. I don't care. There are any polls about my person, so I can speak and be free.
So I have many more questions, but I think I would like to open it up to the audience to hear. And so please just raise your hand, and then I'll call on people. I'll keep track of lots of hands, and then please just introduce yourself as well. So I saw you first, David Spreen.
David Spreen, I'm assistant professor of history, German history, as I work here at Harvard. You were saying that ideally we have a majority that believes in liberal democracy. But of course, historically in post-war Germany, that is not true. In the late 40s, there were very few people who believed in liberal democracy in the Western sectors. There were a lot of anti-communists, and a real sense that one needed money. By the 1950s, you have a few more people who believe in liberal democracy in the West, but still not that many. But now there's really a promise of upward mobility. Would you say there's a promise of upward mobility in Germany today? And if not, then what do non-populist parties have to counter the right-wing tendency to deny all the crises and deflect, because of course the AfD also has no concept of upward mobility. They're not interested in that, but they distract from that. How do you distract from that, instead of saying, well, it's really just a hard time?
So, I mean, you are the professor for history, but I would, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that the very idea of democracy is linked, bound in a way to the belief that the future is better than the past. If this is not in the head, and that does not mean that there are problems, but if the Middle Ages had no idea of progress. They just, when you were the son of a blacksmith, then you were a blacksmith yourself or a farmer or whatever, and doing something else and doing something better than your parents, your family, moving somewhere else, going somewhere else, learning something else. This is the very idea of progress, and this is the starting point of liberal democracy. So the answer is no. If this is under pressure or we are losing it, we are losing the belief in democracy. And not only in Germany, but you asked me about Germany. Now Germany is under pressure. Now this is not very concrete. Everything I said until now was maybe you could use it also for other countries, but Germany has huge economic problems, and not only recently, but it started, I would say, in 2016, 17. From 2018 on, we have now a declining potential growth figure. That potential growth means the possible amount of GDP growth you could achieve if everything went well. And this is now down to 0.5% due to the aging population, lack of workforce, and lack of money, capital money, investments in Germany, and then other things like the loss of Russian gas, cheap gas, really hitting the German energy-intense industry hard. The 50% of the German GDP comes from exports, unprecedented also in comparison to other countries. Even China has only 20 or 25 or so. So, I mean, yeah, we are 80 million Germans and the third largest economic power after China and the US. This is the only reason that this could happen, is that we export to the world. We need open markets, a system where tariffs are coming, where trade is weaponized, energy is weaponized. It's really harming the German economy more than other countries. And this is not without, you can find solutions, but these solutions need work. So you can, I would say, quite easily fix the German social fundings, the social system, and you can also do better with the labor force. Like, I don't know if this is true in America. I'm now living, as you just pointed out, in Denmark, but when you're married, you have a combined tax scheme. Is it the same in the US, or is it individualized?
You can do it combined.
You can do it combined.
Yeah.
Well, in Germany, huh?
You can choose.
Yeah, you can choose.
You don't have
Yeah,
to
but
find someone.
from the financial issue, sometimes it's, at least in Germany, you can also, of course, you can always pay more taxes voluntarily. So while you can also choose to pay more taxes, like being taxed individually, but nobody really does. And because children are still born by women, normally women have this gap in their biography, and in between, I don't know, 25 and 30, they earn a little bit less. And because the tax system is multiplying this effect over the tax system time, the amount of women working in Germany is the average of Europe. But the working hours women work is like on the bottom of it, meaning they are working part-time, because it's not because combined with the men earning more, the outcome is the same. And they ask themselves, why should I work more if the taxes are higher? So the system is really preventing women to go into full-time working, and these are easy fixes, so to say. But of course, they are not easy at all, because when you touch the social system, you're familiar with everything that's debated here in the US. It's like everyone has something to lose, and then everything is exploding. So Germany, you can, from the outside, you can easily say how to fix the German system. From the inside, every millimeter is a fight. But we have to win the fight, otherwise we lose the reason to believe in liberal democracy.
Okay, so I'm keeping track of hands. Yes, in the back. Yes. Yeah, you lit the green screen.
Okay. Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a physics grad student here, but I'm from Germany. You were talking about politicians living in their bubble, so to speak, and the question was about structural changes. And I feel in discussions with peers, the notion of Berufspolitiker often comes up. So I would just be curious what your thoughts are on changing this system and, having something more like, instead of after one term you leave, within your term, you switch in and out of your job.
Yeah, that was the very idea when my party was founded, that you had a short term, I think it was only 2 years you were allowed to stay in parliament, which had two negative effects. First, of course, politics is a job. You can learn it. The funny thing is you can only learn it in politics. To be a politician, reading politics at the university and be a politician is something completely different. I would even argue that academic study and having good arguments and winning an argument is something like black and white. It's a completely different world. So of course you can learn how to speak, how to convince people, which argument is you can overcome your nervousness first time in television. You create a network. You know more. You learn more. So 2 years is a short time, and of course, after the next, people make a difference sometimes. So it's not given that the next on the list who come in are as good as the one who left politics. So this very idea of no matter, in the end, there was the idea behind it. It doesn't matter who is sitting there because they are all the same, and they are not. So I think this is the wrong approach. What I see is that in professional organized parties, as the Greens had become, there was a change because from the youth organization, there's a short way direct into the parliament. So when the Greens were founded in the very early years, there were a lot of students because they were, some of them, like Joschka Fischer, they were students as a profession in a way. But there were also others. There were generals, surprisingly, and they had normal jobs. They founded a party out of their normal lives. And when you start your political career very, very early and you become a member of the German Bundestag in the, mid-20s or maybe end of 20s, you earn a lot of money there. You are used then, even if you are a decent person, you are used to living in these spheres of having access to a kind of driving car service or so. And you imagine you do it for 2 periods, then you are end of 30 when you are leaving politics. These are sometimes crucial years, so people are not so sure that they will earn the same amount of money, or maybe they're used to this. It's not luxury, it's necessary. But I can tell you now, after being vice chancellor for a while, remembering your PIN number because you have to pay for your flight tickets yourself, it's hard. I don't know. I checked in the hotel yesterday you gave me, and they wanted to have a credit card as a kind of guarantee if I destroy the television or whatever. And therefore I needed the PIN number, and I was unable to find it. So, and all this. So, I'm a believer of a quota system. I know some people hated it, but we invented the quota system for women in politics. So every second place is reserved for women for the Green Party, and maybe a quota system not in the very strict sense, but maybe parties should look that all kinds of people of the society should be represented there, including, of course, young people, students, and so on, but not all of them. And what is really lacking in politics in the German parliament and also especially I would say in my party, is craftsman the right word? Handwerker,
Yeah,
people.
craftsmen.
Yeah, we have no problems in finding lawyers or Steuerberater is a very German kind of, yeah?
Tax consultant, yeah.
What's it called?
Tax consultant.
Tax consultants.
Yeah.
I would say maybe too many tax consultants are sitting in the German parliament. But bakers or nurses or people working in the kindergarten or lorry drivers or bus drivers. I don't know if there ever was a bus driver in the German parliament. And of course you can say, well, this is not up to the Greens to find a bus driver. We find some, I don't know, left professional intellectual. But why? So the very idea that I presented is rural areas, don't forget about it, that maybe the parties should think about at least presenting some of the people that are underrepresented in the parliament. But when you see, you don't have to be very clever to see this is not us. When you're a bus driver and there are only tax consultants or lawyers or whatever they do as a normal job, but all have a degree from academia, and you listen to them and you somehow find it hard to understand why things are so complicated. It's very easy to say what kind of society they are presenting, not me. And then it's very easy for the right-wing parties, okay, you are unsatisfied, come to us. We hate them all. And when we are in power, we destroy the whole system.
So there's a lot more questions. We're going to run out of time probably, but Matthias was up next. So.
Nicolas Maduro was a bus driver when he started off. No, my name is Matthias Risser. I'm a professor at the Kennedy School. I'm actually a philosopher, so I appreciated your Kantian elaborations, but I have a very unphilosophical question for you. So one thing that we know from empirical studies of politics is that what matters to people is delivery, delivery, delivery. Politics has to work for them, policies have to work for them. And that leads me to your reflections, which I find very plausible, about what's causing all this unhappiness in many countries that lead people to left-wing parties. I think to right-wing parties. I think your observation about economic loss there is spot on, and the immigration concern is kind of downstream from there. But if you think this way, then in a way we are coming to a well-understood problem in the social science that there's economic gains at the aggregate level for a country, and then we have this massive political problem of how to make sure that this gets actually distributed in ways that is fair and in ways that creates the situation that I spoke about a minute ago about people being happy about the delivery. And so my question for you, given that you have this analysis and now that you're no longer in office, could you maybe share some reflections where on that front, more policy delivery to make sure gains from globalization, the cumulative gains from globalization, get distributed better to people around the Sachsen-Anhalt so that people are not frustrated?
Before you answer that, because we're going to run out of time, and so I don't want to give your question short shrift, but maybe just put a couple more questions on the table, and then you can sort of weave these together, as I'm sure you are able to. So Daniela Schwarzer, yeah.
Center at Bertelsmann Stiftung Germany. Robert, you mentioned the need to innovate democracy, and you spoke of some kind of movement needs to be created. At least I understood you that way. What would that movement lead to? How can that innovation, which I think we need to take people along, how can that become policy relevant? I want to quote two examples and ask you which direction you were thinking. One is Fridays for Future, which I think had an agenda-setting function on climate policy because the young generation went to the streets and even the CDU could not deny that this is an issue anymore. So that was a successful example. We have another innovation example in France, and that was La République En Marche, which Macron created and made it into a political party, which then essentially more or less destroyed, or at least shattered the party system and has proven not very sustainable. So my question is, in the German system, what are you thinking about? And in particular, you were the president of the Green Party, which is one of the very few successful party creations in post-war Germany. So how do you operationalize that idea of something innovative has to come along?
So two excellent questions. I'm just going to squeeze one last one in, if I might. So Karl.
Karl Kaiser, you mentioned the internal contradictions as the element that will eventually change the right wing. Now, looking at the AfD, how do they deal, and how do you see it, this problem of being pro-Russian and anti-Russian, pro-American and anti-American, these various things. How will that affect the future of the AfD?
So I'll start with that one because this is maybe the most concrete answer I could give. What really caused the AfD is, you know that in the American security strategy, we haven't talked about that, but in the security strategy of the government, it is said that our partners are the right-wing parties of Europe. So not the European governments. So this is going beyond the Peace of Westphalia, basically, where we accepted that countries are doing their thing, whatever they're doing, but we don't interfere in other internal politics. So, and you know that J.D. Vance met Alice Weidel and Elon Musk campaigned for Alice Weidel in Germany. So this is all well known. But so they really felt that they have now a government that belongs to them, American government, and the German AfD is directly giving information to Putin, or at least people there are incidents where you could think about it. What really created destruction in them was when your president, or it's not your president, but the American president said recently that all the soldiers who fought in Afghanistan from Europe fought in the second row. Because of course they think they're also for the army and the proud tradition of the German army, which is of course a difficult thing to say and to think, but that was too much. So there is, as you rightly pointed to, there is some disturbance among the right-wing parties of Europe because now suddenly the right-wing American government turns against the national interests of the parties, including the Greenland issue. So it was very complicated for them to maneuver their way through, not saying that national sovereignty counts, and saying national sovereignty counts and Trump is right. So this is kind of from outside inflicted inner contradiction in the parties. Perfect observation. I take the second question, the first question as a second answer. Well, everything I'm saying now, I could either me or otherwise, you should talk about longer, but this is now a very Scandinavian answer in a way. I think that only social justice in a way of distribution, so like taxes and healthcare systems and premiums for insurances and so, is not working good enough alone. This is part of it, of course, like taxing the rich, not everyone, the rich maybe not, but most of them would say, rich, this is not me, so there are always other people who are richer, and I wouldn't argue against it. But as far as I can see, the Nordic, the Scandinavian welfare state is working a little bit better than others. And what they are doing is creating participation justice, if you think about it, meaning they are paying high taxes, people are paying high taxes, also middle income people are paying high taxes, but with the money they create public space. And public space means Copenhagen, for example, everything is for free. You can swim in the sea from the town in the sea, from public swimming stations where there's a guard. So it's clean. There's a guard. So there are playing grounds everywhere. There are basketball grounds everywhere. When they build up new parking banks, they include in the parking banks barbecue stations. So they want people to barbecue in the park, and they're doing it. And of course, when you swim in the water, the billionaire and the bus driver, they look the same and they experience the same water. This is not a guarantee that democracy works better, but how you design the public life, I think, is underrated. I'm saying this because in January I taught or was 1 month in Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem, because I have now some kind of awareness, you can see that they are going completely the different way. They try to divide the city. They are in Copenhagen, as one example, because I'm living there, they try to build the transportation routes as combining people. When they try to build new houses, they always use the inner spaces like brownfield areas, old harbors, old railway stations to bring the people together, and also very inclusive architecture. In Jerusalem, and also they try to bring, you know, that all the Danes are riding bicycles. They try to bring the cars out of the city, that the city is not divided, and the division is normally between parts of the town where the rich people are living and part of the town where the migration people are living and whatever. And this is happening in Jerusalem. They are designing now the city that the ultra-Orthodox are living on one side of the street and the Palestine people on the other side. And of course, I mean, this is a special place and a complicated city, but they are trying to divide the community. And I think this will create a tremendous clash of culture, of religions. And that would be my answer. Not only think about tax system, but think about public spaces where people from different regions, different genders, different incomes, different political systems have access to and maybe come together. Now the last one is the most complicated. You got me, I have to say, because if I would have the answer, I may not be sitting here, but do something else, maybe be in politics. I don't know. But I can at least outline something. I would say, due to the experience I'm now gaining, looking from outside on Germany. You mentioned the Macron movement, which at least now you can argue, now he maybe has destroyed the political party system in France. Finally, and if Rassemblement National becomes now the strongest party, maybe this is the effect of this destruction of the party system. But on the other hand, he achieved a stable democracy, pro-European democracy over the past 10 years. So I was always a fan of Macron. So I see the problems with that, but I give him credit for that. And so, second example, I mentioned I'm living in Copenhagen. They have a tradition of minority governments, which means they always have to try to find majorities in the parliament, but not given majorities. Now, Mette Frederiksen, the prime minister, everyone knows now Mette Frederiksen in the US due to Donald Trump and the Greenland issue. It's the first time in Denmark after a long time that they have a majority government. And my Danish friends were really upset when this government was formed. They called me and said, "Robert, can you imagine what's happening in our country? Now they can do whatever they want. They have a majority in the parliament." And I said, "Yeah, welcome to my life. It's a good thing." And I would happy, that was the time of my coalition crisis, I would be happy to say, I have still a majority in the parliament. No, they said, this is not the way we're doing things. We always have to negotiate. When you have a minority government, you always have to find a majority with other people. You have to reach out for them. Now, for the Germans, a minority government would be complete failure, would be crisis, like unstable. I can only say this because I'm not a politician anymore. If I would go out and say, think about a minority government, the German media would throw stones at me. But something of that maybe at least creates an idea of what you can think about. So when I bring it all together, maybe a solution lies in some kind of agreement between parties and an offering for the future to create a government that is there and sending people in the government to solve the problem of this term, and only this term. So it's not an expert government, as in crisis Italy has the tradition of bringing some financial experts and agriculture experts and whatever experts. This is not what I'm saying. I think this must be connected to the political reality of the country. So there must be some political vibe. It cannot be a neutral kind of thing. But it must be, in a way, free of the inner contradictions of the system I tried to describe. And the ones who are entering this government maybe are ready to do whatever is necessary, but don't expect to use this as a step in their political career. And something between these 3 points, doing it for only this reason, kind of an agreement between Macron formed his party out of different parties. Politicians from all kinds of parties entered his movement that time, and then it became a kind of normal party in a way. What kind is the problem for me? And the idea of not being afraid of finding majorities on the way maybe can create a room of thinking. But the answer I don't have, otherwise I won't sit here.
Well, so you're making use of your time to think of these new possible pathways, and so this is a
Or
work in
make
progress.
others think about it.
Yeah, or provoke
Why
others
should I
to
do
think
all the
about
work?
it. Yes, right. Well, you've been doing a lot of work, so thank you very much, Robert Habeck. Please join me.
Thanks, it was a pleasure.